Welcome to Old Crow Crochet, and today I'm going to be giving you a tutorial to work with your minis. Minis from your advent calendars, or just, scrap yarn, leftover sock yarn in particular, that you might have collected and you just need a really good scrap project. And this Starry Nights Cool Weather Wrap is a great idea for just that purpose. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make this beautiful Starry Skies cool weather wrap. As you can see, I've got a couple of different crochet techniques happening here, some embellishments, and even a little subtle lace work that just finishes off the ends of this wrap perfectly. First, I'd like to talk about the yarn and thread that I used in this project. So the first yarn that I used is basically a sock yarn. Now, I did actually design this project around the use of sock yarns because I love sock yarn. And sock yarn just isn't for socks. Now, the yarns I'm working with is from Hedgehog Fibers. This is a company that makes hand-dyed yarn, and this particular yarn is a superwash merino sock yarn, 75% wool, 25% nylon. So basically, the majority of the yarn I used in this project is actually sock yarn. However, there were some other yarns and threads that I used. And so I'm telling you all of this so that you know that if you don't have, let's say Hedgehog fiber yarn, or, this particular brand of hand-dyed yarn, maybe there is some sock yarn or something equivalent, as I discussed before, that you have on hand from, let's say Hirschner's. Get one of their sock yarns that is typically going to be quite a bit more affordable and just as nice. Next, you can continue to use sock yarn, and that's fine. I happen to have a beautiful lace weight yarn. So it's a heavier lace weight yarn. This is actually a hand-dyed mohair. And the color of this is just beautiful. It's perfect for my needs. The weight and size of the yarn itself is comparable to what I'm using, so it works out perfectly. Now, this yarn is 100% mohair, and it comes from Conid Farm and Spinnery. I'm not sure if I've pronounced that name correctly. And this company is located in Kentucky. So this is... Lastly, I am going to be using standard crochet thread. This, of course, is an Aunt Lydia crochet thread. You can use any brand crochet thread that you want. You're just going to want it to be approximately a size 10 crochet thread. This happens to be a violet color, and it works perfectly with mine as well. So basically, for this project, you are going to need approximately 600 grams of your sock yarn or a comparable weighted yarn. And then, your crochet thread. You're really not going to use all that much. So if you just purchase one of these balls or rounds of the crochet thread, you're going to be in better than great shape, and you're going to have plenty of thread left over. But to be more specific with the sock yarn, you're actually going to want to have 200 of those grams to be your base color, your color A, if you like. But that's the color you're going to need the most of, because that colorway is what's going to be used frequently to ground the rest of your work. Other than that, your other 400 grams of sock yarn, really do the colorways that you enjoy, that you like. Remember, these sock yarn minis are fantastic for this project if you don't know what you're going to do with yours. The next thing you're going to want to get is your variety pack of shisha mirrors, or rather the package or combination of colors that work for the project and colorways you are choosing to work with. I happen to have 18 millimeter ones here. Sometimes they come a little bigger, sometimes they come a little smaller. This just happens to be the size that I was able to locate. and it worked out perfectly for my needs. Next, you're going to just want your basic tapestry needle. Now, you want it with an eye that's big enough to handle the yarn you're working with, but you want it small enough to be able to easily sew your shisha mirrors in place. Next, you're going to be using 3 different sizes of crochet hook. Now, for the actual square, for the 3 colored cluster star burst square, I'm going to use a C, also known as a size 2, or if you work in metric system, it's going to be a 2.75 millimeter hook. So this is the size hook we're going to use for the squares. In terms of the thread, the crochet thread, I'm going to be using a 2 millimeter hook. And this is for making the lace edging. Now for that stitch, that really very much resembles in look and feel of a knitted stitch, I am going to want to use a Tunisian hook. And this Tunisian hook is a 3 millimeter. So this project has several steps to it, but each one is completely digestible and easy to follow, and it's just one after the other. So you're not going to be bouncing back and forth from technique to technique. It all happens in a matter of ABC order, if you like. So first, I'm going to take you through and I'm going to show you how to make the blocks. And then I'm going to show you how to do the knitted technique with a Tunisian hook. And then after all of that is said and done, I'll take you back and then show you how to make the lace edging. And while we're doing this, we're also going to be putting things together. And this time I'm going to do things just a little different. I'm still going to take you step by step. But what I am going to do is, because the scarf itself gets a little crazy and the colors are a little, I don't want to say chaotic, but there's a lot going on in terms of color, and I want you to see exactly what it is that I'm doing so there's no confusion. I'm actually going to show you how to make the majority of this project using some scrap yarn. Now, the yarn I'm going to be using is a 4-weight acrylic yarn. And of course, because of that, I'm going to be using a larger hook on that. So just ignore the hook. Just pay attention to the actual stitches and the steps that I'm taking with those stitches. And then, of course, I will show you what that looks like as we go along in terms of the actual wrap itself. Now, if it sounds confusing at this moment, just hang tight, and I believe it'll make a lot more sense, and it'll come off way more easy to read than how it sounds with me trying to explain it to you. Okay, so with all that said, let's get started. So we're going to begin with the crocheted squares. And the squares, you're going to want to make a total of 30 of them. And the squares are going to consist of 3 different colors. So as you can see, this right here is my base color, this speckled sort of dusky sky gray kind of evening colors in this particular yarn. And this is also my base color. So this is the color that I'm going to want to have at least 200 grams of. Now, throughout the making of this wrap, my base color, or color A, is never going to be a different color. It's always going to be that color. Base color and color A color are going to be the same color, but I'm going to use those terms interchangeably. So just giving you a little bit of a heads up. Then next, you're going to have your B colorway, and that will be this next color that you choose in your pattern. And then after that, your third colorway, or color C, is going to be the last of the colors. So that's how I'm going to explain it to you: color A, color B, and color C. Now, as you can see, this can get a little hard to see, especially as I'm working. So what I've done is I'm making basically kind of some example swatch here. And I've made the first one, and I will show you how to make this block with the next one I start. And this one is made using a weight 4 yarn. So basically your standard size weight yarn, your heavier worsted weight yarn. This is what this is made from scraps of yarn that I happen to have around, using acrylic yarn that isn't particularly great yarn, but it's perfect for scrappy example projects and demonstrations like this. Another thing I wanted you to see was how much bigger this block right here is compared to the block you will be making for this scarf. Now, the block you'll be making for this scarf is going to be approximately 4 by 4. Yeah, we're looking at, actually, it's going to come out to almost 4.5 by 4.5. And with the example block I'm showing you, you're looking at, oh yeah, probably near 7 inches by 7 inches. So it's considerably bigger. So just keep that in mind. So while I show you how to do things with the example block, I'm going to toggle back and forth to the actual wrap itself so you can kind of see what things look like as they're going together. And then, of course, you can see how perfectly those different sock yarn minis, because the minis usually come in approximately 20 grams, or at least the sock yarn minis I used on this, they came in 20 gram skeins. And you can see how I used those colors in different aspects and on each of the different squares to just really give it that night filled with diffused lights coming from all those varying colors of stars. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to show you how to make this 3-color cluster square. Now, because my base color for this example is the blue, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to use that blue again. I'm going to set this aside. And for this piece, I'm going to go ahead and you're going to chain 8. Now, what you want to start off in the beginning is you're going to leave yourself a nice long tail, maybe 6 inches or so. That tail is going to be what you use to sew your shisha mirror in place. But first, I'm going to begin by making a slip knot. And then I'm going to chain 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to slip stitch in the very first chain to make a ring. Then I'm going to chain 4, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And this is going to count as my first treble. And I'm just going to take my tail, I'm going to move it out of my way while I work. Now, for those of you who don't know how to make a treble is basically the next size up from a double crochet. And how I'm going to do that is I'm going to yarn over twice. And then I'm going to insert my hook into that ring. And then I'm going to yarn over again. I'm going to pull that through once, yarn over, pull it through twice, yarn over, and pull it through for the third time. And that is what a treble crochet looks like. Now I'm going to make 4 more of these trebles. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And that gives me 6 trebles because this first chain 4 is a stand-in for a treble. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Next, I'm going to chain 2. And then I'm going to make a treble crochet 6 times. 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So now I'm going to repeat that last pattern we just did 2 more times. So I'm going to basically chain 2, and then I'm going to treble crochet 6. Then I'm going to chain 2 and treble crochet 6. And then I'm going to chain 2 and I'm going to join into the 4th chain of round 1. So let me go ahead and get those next 2 sets of patterns done, and then I'll meet you right back here when it's time to join. So now I've just chained my last 2, and then I'm going to go up here and I'm going to join right here into this 4th chain. I'm going to join with a slip stitch. And then we're going to move on to round 2. Now round 2 is where I began making clusters. And for those of you who don't know how to make a cluster, I'll take it slow and so that you can see what I'm doing. Okay, so this first step I'm going to take for round 2 is I'm going to chain 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. This is the part of the square where we make the cluster. And for those of you who don't know how to make a cluster, I'll show you. So remember, this 4 count right here of the chain is going to stand in for the first treble. And so basically, this is going to be a 6 treble cluster. And how I do that is I'm going to begin like I normally would a regular treble. So yarn over twice, insert my hook into the next stitch, yarn over and pull that yarn through. So you should have something that looks like this. And then I'm going to continue. I'm going to yarn over and pull it through the 2 loops. And then I'm going to yarn over again and pull it through the next 2 loops. Now, normally for a treble, I would yarn over that 3rd time and pull it through the last 2 loops, but in this case, I'm going to leave them on the hook. And I'm going to do that with the next stitch. So yarn over twice, and then I'm going to yarn over and pull that yarn through the first 2 loops, yarn over, pull it through the next 2 loops, and then I'm going to leave that last loop on my hook, and I'm going to begin my next treble. So again, I just brought it up to the very last step of the treble. I'm going to continue that way until I have all 6 trebles on my hook. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Next, I'm going to yarn over. I'm going to pull that yarn all the way through every single loop. And then I'm going to make a slip stitch, and that is my cluster. Next, I'm going to chain 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here to this chain 2 space here on round 1. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to slip stitch right into that space. And then I'm going to chain 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So then I'm going to begin with my first treble in the cluster, second treble in the cluster, third treble in the cluster, fourth treble in the cluster, fifth treble in the cluster, and then my sixth treble in the cluster. Now this time we're going to have 7 loops on the hook. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 because we've got the loop from our chain 5. I'm going to yarn over. I'm going to pull that yarn all the way through all those loops, and then I'm going to make a slip stitch. I'm going to chain 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then again, I'm going to slip stitch right here in this chain 2 space. And I'm going to chain 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Next, I'm going to begin with my next 6 treble cluster. Yarn over, pull that yarn all the way through the loops, slip stitch, chain 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, slip stitch into the chain space, and then chain 5 again, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And I'm going to do my last 6 treble cluster. And of course, I'm going to chain 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. A slip stitch in this chain space. I'm going to chain 5 again, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And I'm going to come up here to this slip stitch here at the top of my very first cluster that I made, and I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to slip stitch right into that stitch. Now, at this point, you might decide to fasten off, but because I'm going to be using this color A yarn again for round 4, I'm going to just basically leave it here without fastening it off. And so I'm simply just going to take my stitch marker and I'm going to put it right there so I don't lose my stitch and I don't use my yarn, because this is also where we're going to pick up again too. So we're just going to go ahead and put that to the side. Just basically going to save a step and keep us from having to weave in an additional end unnecessarily. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up color B. And for color B, here in round 3, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to tie it right there into that very same slip stitch. Just like that. And then I am going to treble crochet 3 into this chain space. So I've got my first treble, I'm getting started. Don't mind that little extra end. I like to work my loose ends in as I go along so I don't have to weave any more than I need to at the end of the block. And I'm going to make my first treble, and then my second treble, and then my third treble. Next, I'm going to chain 1, and then I'm going to work 3 trebles again. So 1, 2, and 3. Then I'm going to chain 2, 1 and 2, and I'm going to work 3 trebles again right here in the same chain space here from round 1. So I'm going to have 1, 2, 3. And then I'm going to chain 1, and then I'm going to treble 3 more times. So 1, 2, and 3. So this is what my piece looks like so far. Yours should look pretty similar. And then I'm going to go ahead and in the next slip stitch at the top of the next cluster from round 2, I'm going to go ahead and place a slip stitch. And then I'm going to repeat exactly what I did right here. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to treble 3, and then I'm going to chain 1, and I'm going to treble 3 again. Then I'm going to chain 2, and then I'm going to treble 3, chain 1, and treble 3 again, all in the same space. And then I'm going to slip stitch into the top of the next cluster and begin again until my round is complete. I will meet you right back here after I've completed this pattern 3 more times. Okay, so I have my 4 corners done, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back here to where I started, and I'm going to make a slip stitch to finish off that round. And now this particular colorway, color B, I'm actually going to fasten off because we don't need this color anymore. not for this block at any rate. Okay, so next I'm going to just go ahead, I'm going to remove this stitch marker because we don't need it anymore. Not for this block. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to pick up my color A, and then I'm just going to take my loop that I have here. I'm just going to bring it around. I'm going to bring it back into that same slip stitch from round 2 that we've been working in. And I'm going to make another slip stitch. And of course, now we're starting with round 4. And then for round 4, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to chain 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's going to stand in for my first treble. And then I'm going to treble 5 more times into the same stitch. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. That gives me 6 trebles. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to begin another set of 6 trebles, but I'm going to start them over here in this corner stitch, right here in this chain 2 space. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to begin making my 6 trebles. Five, and 6. Boy, scrap yarn is really not the easiest to work with. Okay, so next I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to chain 2, and then I'm going to treble 6 more in this same space. So you can see where we're going. So I'm going to continue just like that. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to treble my 6 right here into the slip stitch that we made here for round 2. And then I'm going to reach over to my corner and I'm going to repeat what we did in this first corner, which is going to be 6 trebles, then a 2 chain, and then 6 more trebles. And basically we're going to follow that pattern all the way around until we finish this last corner, and then I'm going to tie into the 4th chain here of the first stitch of this round 4. And I'll meet you right back here once I've completed that. Okay, so now that round 4 is almost completed, all I have to do is just come here into this 4th chain, go ahead and make my slip stitch, and then I'm going to fasten off and weave in that end, and then I'm going to move on to round 5. So now for round 5, I'm going to begin with my 3rd color, my color C. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to tie into that slip stitch that I last finished off with. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to make a slip stitch, just tie that in there. And then I'm going to go and I am going to place a single crochet in that stitch. Same stitch. And then I'm going to single crochet in each of the next 5 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 makes 6. Now in this next stitch, what I'm going to do is I'm going to double crochet, but I'm going to double crochet into this chain 1 space here on round 3. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to double crochet right there into that stitch right there. And then I'm going to single crochet 6. So then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Then I'm going to single crochet 3 in this chain 2 space. 1 and 2. Maybe I can work with this yarn better. and then my third single crochet into that stitch, that space, and then I'm going to single crochet 6 again. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Again, I'm going to double crochet into this chain 1 space here right below this next stitch in round 3. And I'm going to single crochet 6 again. 1. So I think you can see how the pattern is working out. So each treble is getting a single crochet, and then each space over a chain 1 space right here at the corners is going to get a double crochet right into that third round. And then when we get to the corner into that chain 2 space, you're going to place 3 single crochets into that space. Basically, that's the pattern all the way around. And then when you've completed making your full round, I'm going to meet you right back here. So just continue as we have been doing. So once you've made it all the way around, you can kind of see what your piece should look like so far. And now we're going to move on to round 6. Now for round 6, we're still going to continue to use this color 3, or color C rather, this third color. I'm going to go ahead and I am going to chain 3, and that's going to stand in for my very first double crochet. And then I'm going to double crochet in each stitch after that until I get to the very corner stitch. And then once we get to the very corner stitch, that second single crochet of the 3 single crochets placed in the chain 2 space, I am then going to go ahead and double crochet 3 double crochets into that stitch. So we've come up here and now we've got right here at the 3 single crochets. I've just double crocheted in the first single crochet, and then that second single crochet there on the corner, I'm going to double crochet 3 right there into that same corner stitch. Give me a nice corner. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to continue to double crochet until I hit the very next corner stitch. And in that corner stitch, I'm going to place 3 double crochets. And then I'm going to continue to just place a single double crochet in each stitch after that. And I'm going to continue that pattern all the way around. So each of the 4 corners are going to have 3 double crochets in them, and all the rest of the stitches are just simply going to have the 1 double crochet. I'll meet you right back here when I've completed round 6. Okay, so I've completed round 6, and this is what my piece looks like so far, next to the piece that's already completed. As you can see, I have one more round to go, and that's going to be round 7, and I'm going to do that in my base color, or color A. So for this one, what I want to do is I actually want to tie into one of the corner stitches. It doesn't matter which corner, just pick a corner. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to tie that in, and I'm going to make a chain 2. Oh, this yarn. Anyways, so I've got my chain 2, and that's going to act as my first half double crochet. And then I'm going to make another half double crochet in that same stitch, and then one more half double crochet in that same stitch. Next, I'm going to half double crochet in each of the stitches all the way across until I get to the next corner stitch, and at which time I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to half double crochet 3 times in the same stitch, basically making that corner. I'm going to follow that same process all the way around, and then when I get right back here to where I started, I will explain to you what needs to be done next. So I'm going to go ahead and simply begin to half double crochet, and I will meet you right back here in just a moment. So now that I've got my 7th round completed, I'm going to simply tie in, or join rather, and then I'm going to cut a long enough tail to sew my 2 squares together. So rather than just go ahead tying it off at this point, I'm going to just skip that step because I'm using my base color anyways. Especially since you've got so many squares to sew together. So it's basically going to be 15 squares on each side. You're going to have 3 rows of 5. Now, for the purposes of this demonstration, I'm only doing the 2 squares, but that's all I need to do in order to show you the process of making this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to line up my corner to my corner. And basically, I am just going to whip stitch each stitch all the way straight down the line. Just keep it real simple. This wrap already has so much going on. Things like stitching, you want to just keep simple because the exciting part is in the color and the shisha mirrors. So now you can see that both squares have been whip stitched together. Now, for the sake of demonstration, I'm going to pretend like I have all my 15 squares, that I have my 3 rows of 5 squares all sewn together in one big rectangular piece. And so then the next step I'm going to make in this wrap is I'm going to half double crochet around the outside of the entire rectangle of 15 squares. Now in this first image, you can see how I've got 5 of my squares already with the base color, that 7th row around them, and each of those squares is sewn together to create a strip of 5. And then you can also see the next 2 rows waiting for me to stitch together. In this image, you can see where I've completed those 5 squares in the first row, and now I'm in the process, as you can see in the second row, of putting that second round on each of those squares and then lining them up and then getting, in a position that I like, with color combination that works for me, and then laying them out and getting them ready to be sewn together as well. And finally, this is what a panel should look like. I have 15 in the particular panel that you are looking at. You will want to make 2 panels of 15, and when each of those panels is completely sewn together, that's when you move on to the next step of making another border around each entire panel as follows in the next step of the instructions. So really, again, you can pretty much start anywhere you want to. And I am going to start at the bottom corner of my rectangle because that's going to be an area that can be easily hidden when working in the next steps. So basically, I'm going to come here to this corner once again, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to tie in with my chain 2, which is going to act as my stand-in for my first half double crochet. And then I'm going to half double crochet 2 more times in that same stitch. I'm going to half double crochet in each stitch across the length of my squares. And then when I get to the next corner, again, I'm going to place 3 half double crochets in that corner, and just as before, and then I'm going to continue with my regular half double crochets. Now when I've completed the entire rectangle, and then we're going to move on to the next step. Okay, so now, as you can see, I've got my half double crochet all the way around all the squares that are sewn together. And as you can see here, I had to go with a darker blue. I ran out of my lighter scrap blue, so I switched over to the only blue that I had in scrap yarn, and that was this darker blue. But for all intents purposes, if it's blue, we're going to consider it our base color, our color A. Now, colors B and C, just a quick reminder, can be any color you want them, any combination of colors you want them. These are going to be the variety of sock yarn that you have handy or that you have purchased specifically for this project. So now once all your squares are completed and you've got 2 panels that have 15 squares in each panel, 3 rows of 5. And then of course each panel is then bordered with a half double crochet, a round of half double crochet in the base color. Once you have all that done and completed, it's time to move on. Oh, and just a quick note, your she-shot mirrors, you can pretty much sew those in at any time that you care to do so. I don't feel it necessary to do that for this demonstration, but just in case you were wondering, you can put them in anytime you like. So now we're going to move on. Now that our squares are done, our 2 panels are completed, we're ready to move on to the center part of this wrap. And as you probably guessed, the stitch that we'll be doing for this next part of the wrap is going to be a Tunisian knit stitch, right? It looks like regular knitting. Its name is Tunisian knit stitch. Perfect. Now, in terms of the Tunisian knit stitch, you can use any color you want to. However you want it, whatever combination of colors you want. If there's only like one color you want to say, that's, let's say, a beautiful jeweled heather colorway, absolutely do just that if that's what you want. If you want to use up all your minis, like I did, perfect. And I will show you what that looks like. So you can see all the different minis that I used in this wrap. You can see I had one colorway of mini here, and then a very small colorway of some mini here. Some of these areas I used the whole 20 grams in one swatch, and in others I used maybe half of that in one section and then picked up the rest of that color in another section. Here you can also see, I don't know if you've noticed, but also here I have intermittently, mostly between my minis, but in some areas I've used 2 different colorways in a swatch. I have separated each kind of segment with my base color. You can see with these lines, and they're varying rows, right? So this row right here is in some places just 1 row, and then in another part of it, it picks up and it's like 2 rows. And all that, you know, worked out as a result of where I tied my 2 yarns together when I finished with one and then picked up with another one. This one right here you can see is 3 rows in some places and 4 rows in a couple of other places. So there's really no rhyme or reason to it. I mean, whatever looks good to you aesthetically speaking, that's what I did. Now, I easily got away with adding my base color and mixing that in with this piece because there's so much color going on. And while all the colors are fairly complementary and blend with each other just by virtue of them being sock yarns that have speckles and striping in them, and I pretty much got all these sock yarns from the same company who use the same dyes, so there wasn't a problem with color lots, and so the colors translate really well across the length of this wrap. You can also see too that in various spots of this wrap I also added some shisha mirrors. And you can really place those wherever you like. If you don't want them there, don't worry about it. If you want them there, worry about it. It's entirely up to you and how you would like to present and make your wrap. Okay, so moving on to the Tunisian knit stitch. Basically, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to tie this in like I might any other stitch, right? But I'm going to come here and again, I'm going to go and I'm going to tie right into that corner stitch. And so you can see I've got something that looks like this. Now for this first pass, pass A. So we're going to work in A and B passes. So A is a pass where I'm going to go from right to left, and then B is where I'm going to finish up that row by bringing my yarn back from left to right. And for those of you who aren't too familiar with Tunisian crochet, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. So I'm going to begin. I'm tied in. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my hook and I'm going to insert it into the next stitch. And I'm going to yarn over. I'm going to pull that yarn through. So now I have the next loop on my hook. And then I'm going to take my hook. I'm going to insert it into the next stitch. Yarn over. I'm going to pull that through. I'm going to continue just like that. Insert my hook into the next stitch. Yarn over, and I'm going to pull that through. And I'm going to continue that until I have a loop for each stitch on my hook. So basically this is the foundation stitches for the next part of this wrap. Okay, so now you see I have a loop on my hook for each stitch. And so basically what I've done now is I've completed the first half of row 1. So this first half basically is going to be my A step. And then I'm going to bring it back, basically my B step, in order to create my first row. And this first row is also going to be what would be considered a foundation row. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to yarn over and I'm going to pull that yarn through that first vertical loop. And then I'm going to yarn over, but this time I'm going to pull that yarn through the next 2 loops on my hook. And then yarn over and pull through the 2 loops on my hook. Yarn over, pull through the 2 loops on my hook. And I'm going to continue just that way until I've completed row 1. So foundation row is completed. Now before we move on, I'm just going to throw just a little bit of terminology at you. So this is the vertical bar of the second stitch. This is the vertical bar of the first stitch. So this is the front vertical bar. And then behind is the back vertical bar. And so you can see that through the front of the of your work, right? So this is going to be your front vertical bar, and then right behind it is your back vertical bar right there. And so you need to know this for the next step of this stitch. So we're going to start row 2, row 2A. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to skip this first vertical bar, and I'm going to take my hook and I'm going to insert it into and between this front vertical bar and the back vertical bar. I'm going to put it through, and then I'm going to bring it to the back of my work. I'm going to yarn over and I'm going to pull that loop through. So again, I'm going to take my hook, I'm going to slip it through and between the front vertical bar and the back vertical bar, and I'm going to put my hook to the back of my work. I'm going to yarn over and I'm going to pull a loop through. And then again, right there between the front vertical bar and the back vertical bar to the back, yarn over and pull that loop through. And we can continue just like that all the way down. Okay, so I've completed the first half of my row 2. And so what I'm going to do is exactly what I did for the second half of row 1. I'm going to do for the second half of row 2. So I'm going to yarn over and I'm going to pull that loop through the first loop on the hook. And then after that, every other time I pull the yarn through, it's going to be through 2 loops on the hook. So yarn over and pull through 2 loops. 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 I'm going to continue just that way until I've completed the second half of row 2. And you can start seeing that knit look take place. And you can see how the back is starting to look like the purl stitch from knitting. So I'm going to do one more pass. I'm going to do a third row so that you can get the feel for it one more time. And then maybe I'll have a slightly better example to show you on this before moving on to the next step. So again, I'm going to skip this vertical bar and I'm going to insert my hook between the front and back vertical bars of the next stitch. And then I'm going to yarn over and pull my loop through. Again, insert my hook between the front and back vertical bars to the back, yarn over and pull my loop through. And just get that. Well, now you can see you have this great knit stitch. So when making this wrap, you actually will end up with 2 panels. Each panel is going to have 15 squares, 15 blocks, and whatever length you happen to make your Tunisian knit stitch in terms of the length of your wrap. Now, for example, the wrap that I designed for this project is about 70 inches of Tunisian knit stitch, that part of the fabric. So what I did was I knit stitched about 35 inches on each of my panels. And then I needed to bring both panels together in the back, and I needed to seam both panels together right down the center of my work. So you can see I have one panel and then I have my second panel, and right down the center here is where I seamed my work together. You can mostly only see it as a result of the fact that I used my base color for it because I thought it would blend better, and it did. So unless you're really looking for it, nobody even notices it's there. And depending on who you are is going to depend on how you choose to go about seaming this together. So, and then once you've seamed it together, you have got your length of wrap. So my Tunisian knitted stitch is about 70 inches plus the length, or rather, the length of my 3 squares together. So that's probably going to be about, another additional 15 inches on each side. So we're looking at like another 30 inches. So that gives my wrap, we're moving up to probably, when all is said and done, about 100 inches. So that fits me just fine, depending on your frame or the body frame of the person you are making this for. You can easily adjust that length. You can make the actual center part of this piece longer or shorter. It's entirely up to you and what measurements you are working with. So the next thing I'm going to do is I am simply going to make believe that I have seamed this part of my work to another panel. And then we're going to move on to the next step. I've bound this off, and for all intents purposes, as I said before, we're going to pretend like I have the whole length going on. And we have both panels and everything seamed right down the center together. And now we're going to go ahead and do a single crochet in each stitch around the entire length of your rectangular swatch. And this new border, for all intents purposes, is still going to be used with your base color, your A color. So basically, in just each row of your Tunisian knit stitch, you're going to place a single crochet. And then in each stitch, as you go down the edging and hit the panel that has your squares in it, again, it's going to just be a single crochet for each one of those stitches until you hit the corner of your work. And then when you get to that corner stitch, you're going to go ahead and put 3 single crochets right into the corner. And then you're going to continue with a single crochet in each stitch until you hit the next corner. And then, of course, as before, this is going to have 4 corners. And so in each corner, you're going to place 3 single crochets, and every other stitch or row when you're dealing with the Tunisian knit part of your work will take a single crochet. And so again, coming right up here and transitioning into the Tunisian knit stitch part of it. And basically, I am simply just going to go in and I am going to do my single crochet for each row. Just like so. And then after I've done a single crochet around the entire swatch of my wrap, I am going to do my last color around the edging. So now in my wrap, you can see this base color. And right here is that single crochet going all the way around. And then what I did was the next step, and that's what I'm going to show you right now, is where I used that mohair. And that is the yarn I chose to edge my entire swatch. Basically my entire wrap with this beautiful mohair. So let's move on to that. So I'm basically just going to use this green scrap yarn that I have. And the edging is basically nothing to get too excited over in that it's super simple because you've already done it a lot. And really basically what it is, you know, you're going to tie in anywhere. It doesn't matter where you tie in at. And then you're simply going to chain 2, and then you're going to half double crochet each of those single crochets you just completed. And then your 4 corners, in each of those corners, you're going to place 3 half double crochets in each of those corners. And then when you've finished that, when you've completed your round of half double crochets, this is a good time for you to go ahead and weave in any ends you might have. Sew in any of the shisha mirrors that you want to sew in and haven't quite done yet. And then just clean up anything you think you may need to clean up in terms of just cutting off any loose threads or anything like that. And then once you get all that done and all that prepared, then it'll be time for us to move on to the edging, to the lace edging. And the lace edging, I'm going to show you with the actual lace thread that I have. So now the next and final step we have to do is to make this edging. It's simple, it's fun, it adds just the right bit of embellishment to the end of this wrap. Also, keep in mind the instructions I give you as to how to make this is pretty much going to fit the width of your wrap, so long as you use basically the same size materials that I used in terms of weight and yarn. However, if you've used a larger yarn or your sizing is somehow off for a variety of reasons, and you'll know what that is, then you may have to measure and reconsider the repeats, the making of this edging. That is something that you'll certainly be able to adjust fairly easily, especially once you get into seeing exactly the steps taken to make this trim. So to begin with, I have my size 10 crochet thread, and I have my 2mm hook. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to chain 20. So first I'm going to make my slip knot. I'm going to chain 20. 1, 2, 3, 4, 18, 19, and 20. Next thing I'm going to do is I am going to make 4 double crochets in the 4th chain from my hook. So right in this chain right here, I'm going to place 4 double crochets. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. Then the next thing I'm going to do is I am going to place 4 double crochets in each of the next chains. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. So now I'm going to want to do that 9 more times, and when I'm finished with that, I will have placed 4 double crochets into a single chain 11 times. You can go ahead and continue to do that 9 more times, and then when I've finished that, I will tell you the next thing to do. So one more time in the next chain. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And so you can already see how this is creating those little bobbles because it's causing the chain and the fabric to twist around on itself to give kind of a curly Q kind of a fabric bobble hangy bit going on. I know I didn't explain that well, did I? I didn't describe it well, but it's a fun look at any rate. So 8 more times I need to do this. So now that I've completed all 11 4 double crochets, I should have 6 chains left. So then what I'm going to do next, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to chain 3, 1, 2, and 3. And then I'm going to slip stitch in the same chain that I did my last double crochet in. Then I'm going to slip stitch in the next chain. So now you're going to see 5 chains left, and this is where we are at. So now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the pattern to follow, and you're going to repeat this pattern 24 times. And then after I've completed my 24, so I'll show it to you once, and then and then I'll leave you to it. And when I've completed doing this pattern 24 more times, I will come back and show you the next step in this process. So to get back to where we were at, you should have 5 chains left. You just completed your last slip stitch. And the next thing you are going to want to do is to chain 25. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 23, 24, and 25. So now the next thing you want to do is you want to start with your 4 double crochets. So in the 4th chain from your hook, you're going to place 4 double crochets into that chain. And then you're going to continue to place 4 double crochets into each chain for the next 10 chains. Okay, so now that I've completed all my 4 double crochets, I should be seeing 11 chains between my last motif and my new motif. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to chain 3, and I'm going to slip stitch in the same stitch. And then I'm going to slip stitch in the stitch after that. And then I'm going to repeat the pattern again. I'm going to repeat it 23 more times. So basically what I want to do is the pattern is going to be that I chain 25. Then I'm going to place 4 double crochets into the 4th stitch from my hook. After that, I'm going to place 4 double crochets in the next 10 chain stitches. So at this point, I should have 11 chains between both motifs. Next, I'm going to chain 3, and I'm going to slip stitch into the same stitch that I was last working in. Then I'm going to slip stitch into the next chain stitch, and that sets me up to start the pattern all over again. So I'm going to repeat that pattern 23 more times, and then I'll meet you right back here. And what that will give me is a total of 25 little motifs. Okay, so I've completed my 25 little curly baubles. And if you've completed yours too, you should have something that looks sort of similar to a string of lights, Christmas lights maybe. Okay, so we're going to move on. And I'm right here where I ended with my 25th motif. And so the last thing I'm going to do for this row 1 is I'm going to chain 7. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, right? So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start working my way back for row 2. So I'm going to turn my work. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to single crochet in the 2nd chain from my hook. Then I'm going to chain 7. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Then I'm going to go to the next chain space, and I'm going to make a single crochet right there in the center. And then I'm going to chain 7 again. 5, 6, and 7. And then I'm going to jump over to the next chain space, and I'm going to place another single crochet right there, sort of center of that length of chain. I'm going to continue doing that all the way to the end of this row, and that will be the completion of row 2. Okay, so now that I've completed row 2, or rather I will be completing it right now. So what I did was, with my last count of 7 chain, I went and I actually single crocheted it right there into the very first chain of row 1. And then I'm going to turn my work and we're going to move on to row 3. Now for row 3, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to chain 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And then just like before, I am going to single crochet into the next 7 chain space. And then again, I'm going to chain 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And then single crochet into the next 7 chain space. I'm going to continue that all the way to the end of row 3. And then we get to the end of row 3. I'm going to do something a little different. So I'm going to meet you right over there before showing you exactly what it is that I'm going to do. Okay, so I've almost completed row 3. You can see here. And so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to chain 3. 1, 2, 3. And then I'm going to place a treble right here into this last stitch. Just like so, to finish off row 3. And then I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to chain 1, I'm going to turn my work. And we're going to begin row 4. Now for row 4, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to single crochet right here in the same stitch as my turning chain. Then I'm going to single crochet 5 in this 3 chain space. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then I am going to chain 1 in the single crochet. And then in the next 7 chain space, I'm going to single crochet 7. And then I'm going to single crochet 1 over the single crochet, and then I'm going to single crochet 7 in the next 7 chain space. I'm going to continue doing that for the completion of row 4. So basically at this point, each stitch gets a single crochet. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And then a single crochet over the single crochet over the next stitch. And then I'm going to put 7 single crochets in the next 7 chain space, so on and so forth. I will meet you right back here when I've completed row 4. So now that I'm at the end of row 4, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to chain 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then I'm going to turn my work. I'm going to skip 1. And then I'm going to double crochet into the next single crochet. Then I'm going to chain 1. And I'm going to skip the next stitch, and I am going to double crochet in the next stitch. Chain 1, skip 1, and double crochet into the next stitch. One more time, chain 1, skip 1, and double crochet into the next stitch. So I'm going to continue that pattern of chaining 1 and then skip 1 and then a double crochet until I've completed row 5. So now that I've finished row 5, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to chain 2, and I'm going to turn my work. And in each stitch and in each space, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I am going to make a half double crochet. So all the way across in every stitch and in every one chain space, I am going to make a half double crochet. And then when I have finished this row, I am going to fasten off, but I am going to leave myself a tail long enough for sewing this edging onto the edging of my wrap. So I'll see you right back here in just a moment to show you how I sew the edging on. Okay, so I'm at the end of row 6, my final row, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give myself a nice long tail because this is what I'm going to use for sewing. So basically, I would say a good rule of thumb is 2.5 times the length of the stretch of material I'm going to sew across. Seems to be about the right amount. Okay, so now I've lined up my edging with the edge of my wrap, and I have, of course, used my stitch markers to pin everything into place. And then now I'm going to begin to sew. And again, this is just a simple whip stitch. I begin to sew, and what I'm doing is I am going to bring my needle through the back bar. So you can see the front bar or the front loop, however you want to call it. And then we've got the back loop or bar here on the edging of the wrap. And then right here is the full stitch of the half double crochet on this side. And what I'm going to do is I am going to sew through just that back bar of the wrap edging, and then I'm going to bring my needle through both bars or loops of the half double crochet. And I'm just going to whip stitch it just like that. Now I'm not going to pay too much attention to the stitches themselves actually lining up. What I'm going to do is pay attention to the length of edging work matching up with its corresponding length along the edge part of the fabric. And then when I've completed sewing this on, I will meet you right back here for a few final words. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial as much as I enjoyed making this Starry Skies Cool Weather Wrap tutorial for you.